Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tacos and Tech Tuesday for April. I hope you didn't have too many jokes played on you this morning. But happy April Fool's Day. Today, we are going to hear from Ryan Allred with Observian. He is going to talk about Google Notebook LM. If you have any questions, we'll have time at the end to address questions. You can put them in the chat, the Q&A, raise your hand. For those of you streaming, you can message me directly. Go ahead and take it away. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you. And sorry, we had some technical difficulties today. Normally we've got awesome background music. Jordan's right over here in the corner fuming. So that's our April Fool's treat. I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous today, and I'll tell you why. My daughter woke up this morning and I explained to her what April Fool's was, and she was very excited by the idea. She's 6 years old and apparently hadn't experienced April Fool's yet. So explained to her what April Fool's is, and she immediately goes and plays an April Fool's joke, which was punching her brother in the throat and then yelling, "April Fool's!" Which, while hilarious, I'm nervous that I'm not going to be able to articulate an idea to you guys, because clearly I was not able to explain April Fool's very well to my daughter. So hopefully I get it better on the second try today and can actually explain what Notebook LM is to you guys. But if not, anyone that gets punched in the throat, that's not my fault. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to talk about Notebook LM. All right, is everyone able to see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Perfect. Okay, so Notebook LM, I'm going to start by saying to access Notebook LM, the first thing you need to go do is go to notebooklm.google.com. It's not going to be found in your little widget up here yet. It's something that you need to navigate directly to. That's going to change shortly, but for now, we're going to notebooklm.google.com. Once we're here, this is just the homepage of Notebook LM, right? So there's nothing fancy here other than it's worth noting each one of these notebooks is separate, right? They're not peering into one another. So I have one called the State of Utah Budget. If I want to create another notebook with a different topic, I would come create new and then have a new topic available, right? The reason these topics are important is kind of the strength of Notebook LM and Notebook LM Plus. So the version, or Notebook LM Plus, the difference is you guys have like 5 times the capacity of just standard Notebook LM, but everything is also trained internally and nothing gets external, right? So from a security standpoint, it's a tool we can absolutely use, but you also have 5 times the limit of normal Notebook LM. So I've said a lot of things. What does this all mean? Notebook LM uses the strategy of what they call grounded AI, right? So if I click into this notebook that I have here, you'll notice that on the left-hand side, I have these sources available to me. And these are sources that I uploaded earlier because I didn't want to have to show you uploading 5 different sources and kind of that process. But the reason I have 5 sources in here is Notebook LM is actually going to look, if I ask questions in the chat here in the center, Notebook LM is only going to look at the sources I've selected when it gives me an answer, meaning it's not going out to the external internet. It's not going to reference anything that I have not uploaded myself, right? So if you think about that, that's really powerful tool, because now we can put documents that are specific to the state or really specific to the questions you're trying to ask, and make sure that we're not going out beyond anything that we're working on currently. So I'm going to talk about that for just a second longer, but the first thing I want to do is I actually want to start getting this going. This is in the studio section over here on the right-hand side. It's called a deep dive conversation. I'm just going to start generating that because it takes a couple of minutes to generate, so that'll be going during our demo. So I'm just going to kick that off. I'm not going to give it any other instructions, and then I'm going to hide that for now. So let's talk about sources and what we can upload. So if I click on sources, it's going to bring up this window. And from here, I have the option to drag and drop files, right? So that can be PDFs, TXT, Markdown, or audio. So if you have an MP3 file and you want to upload it here, you can actually upload it. And what it's going to do is it's going to transcribe that audio file for you. Okay. And then it's going to give you the transcription as a source. Other sources that we can use are Google Docs, Google Slides, a website URL. So if I click in here, any website that you go to, you can go ahead and copy and paste that URL, and it's going to go grab all that text from that website. Paid articles are not supported though, right? So be cognizant of that. A YouTube channel or URL is going to work as well, and it's going to do a similar thing to what uploading an MP3 does, where it's going to go look at that video and it's going to grab the transcription of what's happening in that video. And then any copied text, so text that you might have saved in, a notebook somewhere or just in a folder, wherever it is, you can copy it and then paste it in here. Okay, and then I'll give you a view of Google Docs. It's going to link you directly to Drive. Notice that currently it's only highlighting docs and slides. So right now it is not supported to upload a Google Sheet, for example, right? So if we do have spreadsheet information or chart information that we want to upload into Notebook LM, you can upload those charts into a slide and then use that slide. Or if they're in a PDF, you can upload that PDF, and it does a good job about understanding what's happening in the chart. But just know right now we're not able to upload directly from Sheets. Okay, so I'm going to close out of that. And I'm just going to show you, here we go. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sources here on the left. And now I'm going to show some of the things that I think are really cool. So I'm actually not even going to type out any questions right now. I'm just going to ask one of the generic questions that it has available for us. So if you see my marker here down at the bottom, what are the largest proposed expenditures and revenue sources for Utah in the coming fiscal year? So I'll highlight that, and it'll ask this question. So like I said before, when it's asking a question, it's only going to look at the highlighted sources for the answers, okay? And it's going to give me, what is a pretty solid answer, right? So we can go through, read this. You can see that it's looking specifically at fiscal year 2026. That makes sense based on what I uploaded. And then you'll notice we have these citations kind of peppered all over this answer. These citations are what I think makes Notebook LM extremely powerful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select one of these, and let's just pick that one. And on the left-hand side, the source and exactly where it got that cited information from is going to open up, and it's going to be highlighted. So with any one of these answers, I'm able to go back into the source, find where Google derived that answer from, and actually decide for myself in context, hey, did Google represent this information fairly? Right? I can literally go see where it got each one of these answers from. And I can decide if that's a fair representation of the data. So this is giving us a lot more control and a lot more insight to what is happening with our data and how the answers are coming about. So let's try another one. Let's just do this one. And I'll show you that it's a similar thing. We're going to have citations. It's going to pull from, this question is going to pull from more than this single source. So we come in here, let's click on one of these, and let's see, that's the same source. There we go. This is a different source now, so to open up the other source, and it's going to show me exactly where it derived that information from. So again, it's a really powerful tool. And then if we like any one of these answers, one thing about Notebook LM that is hard to understand when you first hop in is, if you think about when we're in like the Gemini chatbot and we have these conversations that you can always hop back into. and you can always continue that conversation because it's kept in storage there. These chats here in the middle of the screen, these are ephemeral. They're going to go away. So if I hop out of Notebook and then hop back into this exact same notebook, these conversations are going to go away. So if I need to save any of this information or something's really useful to me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose at the bottom to save that answer to notes. Okay, so I'll save this to a note. And then we're going to open up the studio on the right-hand side again, and we'll be able to see here's a note that we chose to save for whatever reason, right? Now, while we're over here on the right-hand side, let's talk about some of these options here as well. So notes, these are just exactly what they sound like. So I can add a note myself and, name it however I want. I'll delete that for now, but you can add notes as you're reading through the questions that you have, and these notes will stay there forever, right? So the notes aren't going away. By default, you can also create a study guide. So I'll show you what a study guide looks like here. And it's generating it as a new note immediately. A briefing document, an FAQ, or a timeline. So there's lots of really cool things that we can just generate automatically through Notebook LM. So if I open this up, and this was our study guide. So over here on the right-hand side is my study guide. And it's kind of giving me all the information that I should be looking out for, some of the key answers, everything here that Notebook LM believes is important for me, okay? So if I really like that study guide, and let's say I even want to be able to reference it when I ask questions going forward, I can actually come to the bottom here and choose to convert any of my notes directly to a source. So now I've added an entirely new source. And when I ask questions, because I have all the sources highlighted, it's going to ask questions of those 6 sources. So watch what I do here. If I come in and I untoggle all these sources, if I ask a question, it's going to have no answer because there are no sources in there whatsoever. If I highlight just 2 of these sources randomly, now ask a question, that question will only be asked of the financial year 22 budget book and the 24 budget book, okay? So it's only going to ask those 2 sources, meaning we can have up to, let's see, 300 sources in each notebook, but we don't always have to ask 300 sources a question. If we want to be more granular with what we're asking, we can go and select these sources as it is pertinent, right? So that's a really powerful tool, especially being able to convert our own sources. And I don't know if I said it already, but with those 300,000 sources, or 300 sources, excuse me, that we can put into each notebook, we can have up to 500,000 words per source, right? So 500,000 words, like that's a big book. So you can have a plethora of information in each notebook, and it's only going to answer questions based on the sources you've selected. So I'll go ahead and get rid of that for now. And then I want to, let me hide this for a second. I'm going to scroll all the way. In fact, I'm going to refresh. So this is what it's going to look like every time you hop back into the notebook. It's going to have a refresh screen. It's going to give you some information on what's happening. And then it's going to give you the option to add notes, an audio overview, or a mind map. So the mind map is a new way to visually see how all this information actually interact with itself. So I'm going to show you what a mind map is really quickly and let that generate. Okay, so this is generated. And now what it's done is actually created a downloadable flowchart that I can go in and look, and it says, okay, all these budgets are related to the state of Utah. Here's the years as they're broken out based on what I've uploaded. And then we can open each one of these and look at all the different variables in each one of those mind maps. Right, so some really cool things. And then if I click on a topic in there, in the chat, it's actually going to give me more information on each one of those items. All right, so if we need to visually understand how our data is interacting with each other or with itself, this mind map can be really powerful to understand the topics given in each section and how they interact with one another. So, for a budget, it's not maybe the most exciting mind map, but you can imagine putting in all sorts of healthcare topics or things of that nature and seeing where they intersect through this mind map that is generated really quickly for you guys. That's a pretty new feature, so go give it a try if you've been in Notebook LM and you haven't done anything with that yet. Give it a try because it's really exciting. Okay, let's see. Covered that. Perfect. Okay, so I want to talk about some use cases because this tool is really big. It's really big and it can be kind of intimidating when you first look at it. So I want to explain a use case that I found in my day-to-day work schedule that might help you kind of think about some of the things that you are interested in doing. So obviously, if we just want to research a topic and upload a ton of sources, that's a great way to do it. But I've actually been able to find ways to use it as a project tracker. So we had a client who was migrating from Office 365 to Google Workspace. Okay. Now that's something I'm very familiar with, but they were using all sorts of other tools, right? Like an Okta for single sign-on. They were using Dropbox for their storage. They had Teams and Microsoft. They had Zoom as well. And so I had like 5 or 6 sources, and I needed all those sources to be able to migrate into Google Workspace and, chat and Drive and Gmail and all of those tools that we use on a daily basis. So what I was able to do is I was able to go to the Okta website, for example, and go get all the relevant information on how we do a migration from one service provider to another. Then I was able to do the same for Dropbox and for Zoom and for all of those tools. So I went directly to those websites and actually uploaded URLs, right? Easy enough. I come in here, hit website, and just copy and paste a bunch of URLs. That way I know I'm getting the most up-to-date information. I did the same for the tool we were using to migrate. And then once I had all of that, I uploaded a document from Google that said migration best practices and kind of did a step-by-step on what we need to be looking out for during this migration. Once I had all of that put together, I was able to ask a simple question like, hey, we've got a client who is migrating with these solutions into Google Workspace. Help me create a migration timeline and a migration plan for this client. And it was able to do that and give me step-by-step instructions on what we needed to do. The next thing that I think you'll really like about that is I put that into a Google Doc and I shared it with the client. I said, hey, this is the general steps that we're going to take. We hopped on a call. I recorded the meeting so that I could get the transcript of the meeting afterwards. Once I had the transcript, I put that into Notebook LM. And during the meeting, we had talked about the project and things we wanted to tweak about the project. And then we also assigned tasks for this project to different users, whether it be me or someone on their team, right? So in this transcript, we had a lot of notes and we had assigned tasks. From there, I was able to come in here, add it as a source and say, hey, here's the issues that we're having based on the notes, update this project. And it was able to update everything for me, and we sent it out and executed the project, basically following Notebook LM's instructions. So don't think that these sources are necessarily static. They are things that you upload, but you can constantly be evolving and uploading new sources as you go. So if you're using it for a project, feel free to upload transcriptions, feel free to upload new information as you receive it so that you can continue to learn from it. Okay. That was a lot of talking. I did just want to share that briefly. If you guys have other use cases for how Notebook LM might be helpful to you, I would absolutely love to hear them. But if you remember earlier in the demo, I went ahead and I started this State of Utah budget audio overview. Now, I do apologize. We were having technical difficulties prior, so I wasn't actually able to test that you guys are going to be able to hear this right away. So I'm going to hit play. Stephanie, if you're not hearing it, will you just chime in and let me know?
Yep.
And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hop into interactive mode because I do want to show you guys a pretty cool feature. And I have to allow this because I hadn't yet done it on this device. Okay, so I'm going to hit play audio. Let me know if you hear something or if you do not.
Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling some.
Sorry, can you say that again?
We can hear it. All good.
Perfect. Okay.
Something pretty massive. We're going to be looking at Utah's proposed budget, particularly focusing on fiscal year 2024 as envisioned way back in 2022.
Yeah, so we've got a stack of budget books.
Oh, hey, our listener wants to join in. What's up?
Hi, I'm a concerned parent and I want to understand how the education budget is being handled in 2026.
Hi there. Thanks so much for chiming in.
We really appreciate you joining the conversation.
It's completely understandable that you're curious about the education budget for 2026, especially as a parent.
While our main focus today was on the budget as it was envisioned for 2024, we do have some information that touches on 2026.
Yes, if we look at...
Okay, so I'm not going to make you listen to that whole podcast, but I want to highlight a couple things. First off, it created a 21-minute podcast in about 2 to 3 minutes on the sources that we had uploaded. Now, I didn't do any customization, but I could have, when I generated this podcast, I could have told it to focus on certain areas or think about it from a different perspective, right? I could have given it more instructions. Ultimately, it created a podcast for me, and hopefully you were able to hear it sounds remarkably good, right? It sounds very professional. They sound more human than really they should. It's kind of off-putting if we're honest with each other, but it gives really good information. So you can have just a download of this podcast at any time, right? And you can go generate your own podcasts on any topic, and then download it and listen to it in the car if you want, however you want to handle that. What I just showed you, though, and hopefully you were able to hear it, is I entered a mode that allowed me to actually interrupt the podcast as it was going, ask a question as if we're having a conversation or as if I'm a caller calling into the hotline. And in real time, it pivoted to answer the question that I had asked, right? So it's extremely powerful. If you're listening to this at your desk and you're interacting and asking questions, you can get an audio overview, an audio format of exactly what you're trying to understand and have it explained to you in multiple different ways. So the ability to raise our hand, join the call, and pivot the conversation, the audio that was just generated for us, is extremely powerful. So I hope that you guys were able to hear that. I would really recommend going in, maybe just put a notebook LM together of the best things to do in Moab and go get a bunch of URLs and throw it in there and just generate a podcast. Just give it a try because it is shockingly cool. It works really quickly, and I think you'll be really impressed with the outcome. So a couple things that I want to touch on before I turn time over is, if you notice here, so we've got sources on the left, chat in the center, studio on the right. At the top of chat, we can do a little bit of configuration with our notebook. So I'm going to click into that, and we can define the conversation style of this notebook and how we're receiving answers, right? So default, analyst guide, or custom. Custom, if I click onto that, I'll be able to give more instruction. Keep in mind, it's not exactly as configurable as like a gem in the chatbot, but we can add some custom configuration. And then you can choose the length of the default response. So if you're looking for a little bit more granularity, you can do so by selecting the configure notebook icon in the center of the page there. So with that being said, I hope that I showed you some cool things. I hope this was an exciting tool to you. Oh, and I should mention it is Google Workspace, so we can share this information. Right now, sharing of notebooks is limited to your domain, and that's a Google thing. That has nothing to do with any settings the state has. Google is only allowing people to share notebook within their domain. However, you are able to share the full notebook, meaning they would be able to upload sources or remove sources, generate audio overviews, that sort of thing, or chat only. So chat only, they would be able to go ask questions. So I've got clients who are uploading all of their vacation information and just general HR stuff. And then they're sharing out a chat only version of that notebook with everyone. So they can say, hey, do we have April Fool's Day off? And Notebook LM will tell them that they probably don't have April Fool's Day off. So quick use case there. Okay. Happy to turn time back over or take some questions.
Yeah, Ryan, there's quite a few questions in the chat. I don't know if you can see them or if you want me to read them to you.
Yeah, so I'll be why don't you pick the ones that you want answered, because I want to make sure I get the ones that are.
Yeah, I'll just start at the top with Robbie. Looks like an example of RAG. The chunks are stored in a vector search database. Are we allowed to upload PDFs that may contain PII? The answer is best practice not to put PII into any of this.
But to that first point, yeah, it's very similar to RAG.
Yeah. Okay, Sally, is there a way to upload a Google Sheet as a source? I don't see that as an option when adding sources.
Yep, I think I covered that. Right now, Google Sheets is not available. If you need a chart or information from a Google Sheet, what you can do is put it in a table and then share that table to a slide, and then you'll be able to upload that slide. And it does a pretty good job of breaking down that information. Sheets just isn't available yet.
Okay. Robert asks, what would happen if I asked a question unrelated to the data?
It's going to give you a simple answer of we just don't have that information.
Great. Okay, I think Chandler was talking about sheets. Priscilla, would it be useful in writing SOPs?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. So I'll give you an example, slightly different, but I had a statement of work for that project I was talking about earlier. We have a boilerplate statement of work that we send out for a lot of our different projects. So I uploaded a just demo statement of work, and I said, hey, based off this statement of work, write a statement of work that goes through everything we need for this current project we're working on. And it did a bang up job, right? Wasn't perfect, but it did a really good job, and it referenced the project that I had been working on. So it was really nice.
Awesome. Good use case there. Okay. Stephen asked, is it acceptable to input Q&A snippets from internal emails and documents to create a compendium LM that can then be asked referenced at a future date? The data would be scrubbed so that nothing would be added, considered confidential or personally identifying.
Yeah, I think that would be a great use case for this tool. And then based on how it needs to be used, it's something that you could share with other users with chat only, so that you have control over the sources, but they can get the information they need easily.
Robert asked, are we using Notebook LM or Notebook LM Plus?
You guys have access to Notebook LM Plus. So really quickly, Notebook LM Plus has 5 times the capacity threshold. So you can ask more questions, generate more audio overviews. You can do a lot more. It also lets you upload 300 sources versus the standard is 100 sources. So just bigger and better.
Awesome. Good. Okay, Jennifer asks, if I create a note that references sources, is that saved for the next time I log in?
So if you create a note that references the sources, the note will be saved in the notes section. So here, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong screen. It's going to be saved over here on the notes section, but it will reference, right? Because the note still has it referenced over here, but watch this. If I do something like hop into that note and then convert it to a source. So now I've got this one as a source. Now it's not going to have, I got to close that out because it's going to confuse people. Now it's not going to have those same clickable citations, right? So if it's in a note still, absolutely. If you then convert it to a source, those citations will go away.
Great. Okay, Shane asked, URLs that are added as a source, are they static to when it was linked, or is it updated in real time?
It's updated in well, sorry, I'm confusing this. So I believe it is static to when it was linked. I will verify that. I got some confusing messaging from Google. I believe it is static, but I'll double check that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll check and get back to you on that one. How does the timeline feature work, and is it customizable?
Yeah, let's just do a timeline really quickly and see if it's going to be useful. So to do a timeline, I'm just going to scroll up to the top here. Nope, I'm going to minimize this really quickly. Okay, so I'm just going to click the timeline, and what it's going to do, so it's not overly customizable in that if I create an audio overview, I'm able to customize it. But what it's going to do is it's going to give a timeline of the main events. This would be no different than if we asked for a timeline directly in the chat. So if you create a timeline here and you don't like it as an answer, honestly, just go to the chat section and ask for a timeline and give it all the granular detail that you want, and then it'll be able to create it here in the center for you. But this is what our timeline looks like now.
Cool. All right. Can you rank sources such as official, authoritative, speculation?
That's a great question. The answer is natively right now, no. I have seen some of that talk, and I've heard some whispers about it, but natively that is not supported currently, right? So I suppose you could tell the chat that, hey, these sources are more speculation, but it's going to be ephemeral, so you'd have to tell them that pretty regularly.
Gotcha. Thanks. And to access this, everybody, go to notebooklm.google.com and make sure you are logging in with your Utah ID. If you don't log in with your state of Utah login information, don't use it at this point for state work. Okay, how does the analytics feature work?
Okay, let's show that as well. Okay. So the analytics feature up here, if I click on that, tab. This is similar to when you share a document in docs, sheets, slides, those sorts of things. These analytics are actually going to have more to do with the user behavior in this notebook. So it's going to tell you who's logged into the notebook, who's asked chats within it, just how much activity is happening within the notebook. It's not necessarily analytics on the sources. It's actually more to do with the notebook as a whole. So obviously, I don't have anything good to show you here, but think about when you click this analytics button in a Google Sheet, the kind of information it gives you there as well.
Very cool. Okay, and then we have one in the Q&A. Would this be a usual source for a desk manual?
So a desk manual, the way I'm thinking of a desk manual, correct me if I'm wrong, right? But just a general, here's our stated policy and here's how we do things on a day-to-day basis. Is that a desk manual?
That's how I understand it. I don't know who asked the question. If you want to chime in, feel free if we're getting it wrong.
Yeah, if I'm getting it wrong, I do apologize. What I will say is I've got a client who has a use case that I kind of just described where they've got policies and they've got 20 different buildings and they have different managers at those buildings. And instead of sending out a book, an updated book where they can figure out, hey, what happens if there's a fire? What happens if someone backs up into the flagpole, right? All sorts of things to cover. They put that into a notebook for all those managers to be able to just go ask questions quickly. So if that's a similar use case to the desk manual you're describing, then yeah, absolutely. I think it would be a really great tool because you can update those sources as needed and people can just ask questions in whatever way they like.
Awesome. Okay, that's the end of the list of questions.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, I'll sign off by saying when I first started looking at Notebook LM, it was absolutely overwhelming. I didn't see use cases in my day-to-day. When I looked at Gemini, the chatbot for Gemini, I thought, oh yeah, I could use that every day. I use Notebook LM far more than I use Gemini chatbot because the answers are so good. They're so powerful. I love controlling the sources. I feel so much more confident in using this tool. So if you can't think of a use case right now, I would recommend just hopping in and giving it a go and seeing how you can start solving problems because it's been really, really powerful for me.
Fantastic. Priscilla, did you have a question? Oh, you're on mute.
Okay. Something that he said, and I joined a little late, so I apologize, but something you just said made me think about if this would be an applicable use of this. So I have this new procedure that I'm trying to send out to 10 people or maybe 10 to 15 managers. And there's a couple of different, there's quite a few different facets of it. So did I gather from what you said that if I put that out there, send it to in the Notebook LM, and then we chatted about the questions or whatever, then I could use that to have a historical record of everything and have it kind of point out what the questions and the procedures are. And am I taking that right?
Yeah. So if you in your situation, if you upload these sources, right, we've got a bunch of procedures and we already have them written down.
Mm-hmm.
If we upload them as a source,
Mm-hmm.
we can then ask questions here, right? I've got 7 sources. I'm asking this question of 7 sources. So we could ask questions of those procedures and the policies and how we need to move forward in a given situation. So if you combine that, put that all together for these managers, and then you share that with them and give them a chat only version, you're still going to control the source, but they would be able to come into this notebook and say, hey, what's the procedure for April Fool's Day? How do we handle it? And in that situation, they would be able to get the question answered based on your policy without having to reach out. They'd be able to ask in natural language.
Okay. All right. That's neat. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have more questions coming in, Ryan.
Love
Okay.
it.
Are any of these features available as APIs? Can we integrate these into our apps? Is it even feasible?
Right now, I don't believe it's been released. I would have to double check on that. but I would expect it to be happening. All the other applications have full-blown APIs that we can tie into, so I would expect that if it's not fully released yet, that it's on its way.
Okay. And does the URL, oh, Christian, did you have something on that topic?
Yeah, I just wanted to say when it comes to APIs, if there are software engineers or something that are interested in using APIs, the state's policy is to use the APIs that are available in Vertex AI. And we have AI analysts that can help you with that. If you have a use case where you're looking at using APIs, Google also has something called AI Studio, but there are some privacy concerns with AI Studio. So as of today, AI Studio has been disabled for those privacy concerns because the terms and conditions don't actually meet the state requirements. So if you are interested in doing a project and getting access to APIs, feel free to reach out to me, and happy to have a conversation. But it have to be through the Vertex AI.
Okay, thanks, Christian. Okay, does the URL crawl source subpages? I want to ask questions about the Utah Code homepage here, the URL source crawl.
No, and that's done intentionally, right? Google wants to, they want to make you do the work to put the sources in, because ultimately they want you to have read through the source and at least have an understanding generally of what's happening. And if you start crawling sources, you could go down and you could get really deep into a web page and start pulling in information that you have no interest in. So by design, it does not.
Okay. And how much does it interpret, interpolate, or extrapolate in answering the questions? AI sometimes can make things up, which can be risky when it comes to answering, say, policy-related questions.
Yeah, I love the question. One of the reasons I really, if you've heard of hallucination in AI, I'm sure you all have. It's a tendency that Google or that AI can sometimes start inventing things and convincing itself of things. The reason I really like Notebook LM is because it's only looking at a handful of sources. First off, it tends to, like, I haven't run into a hallucination yet. However, even if you were to, I'm still in the habit of looking through some of those sources and reading it and saying, does that actually make sense? Did Google interpret this correctly? Right? So does it require me to take a little bit more time to read through things? Yeah, it does. Am I still saving a ton of time and creating better work? I think so. So, you know, how much is it doing that? I think you're going to have to be the gauge. But I will say, in my experience, the hallucinations of AI have not affected Notebook LM.
Yeah, always make sure you're proofreading things. Sounds great. Okay, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate you joining us. And Notebook LM seems like a very cool tool that I'm going to start using regularly. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us, services.dts.utah.gov. We can help you with any Google AI questions. Thank you. See you next
I
month.
love it. Thanks, guys.